Jones.
Rick, what's up, man?
How you doing, brother?
Good. Thank you for always greeting me with a smile.
I love you. And
thank you.
I'm inspired by just sitting here with you. You know, if you were a person from my past who will remain nameless, I wouldn't enjoy that.
Okay, but I'm glad. I'm glad I'm not that person.
No, I'm teasing. I'm cool with everybody.
Okay, that's great. So I want to do a show today about how to feel connected in a world in which a lot of people are feeling lonely. So I guess if I had to give a show title to it, it would be how to overcome loneliness and be connected.
Wow, that's a very heavy topic. There's probably 3 or 4 shows in that.
There are. You know, what prompted this podcast topic was I actually listened to a show in which there were some doctors and scientists talking about how much loneliness has affected people in the world today. In Britain, they've actually created a position in the government to help people with loneliness because they have seen a dramatic increase in people feeling lonely.
Yeah.
So I just want to talk about a little bit about that. Can I share some stuff from the show with you?
Let me stop you just for a moment and say that this hits me personally because I think one thing that happens with aging people, and I'm in the boomer generation, is that as people age and they retire and they no longer have that connection with work, and sometimes their spouses are divorced or dead, that they tend to become more isolated and crave more isolation. It's a weird thing, and I think that's very, very unhealthy.
Yeah, you know, it was you're spot on. They talked about the aging population and how it's affected them. But they also talked about young people too, you know, with increased worry, stress, and anxiety, and they don't have a zeal or zest for life, you know. They kind of are also isolating, and there's a lot of depression going on. And I've got some personal friends or people I know who are dealing with depression and feeling lonely. So I really wanted to talk about this show because it's one that hits the heart. And I also have some experience with it myself of going through a period in which I felt lonely. But they talked about one of the things that was really important was surrounding yourself and being in contact with people in a very personal, face-to-face way that will help you overcome feeling lonely and for you to feel connected. It increases your quality of life and you're happier. And they said, you know, social media, which we think that we have all this social media and we have all these friends that we're reconnected with, that you would think that that would make us feel less lonely. But some of the people that I know that in their private setting, in their private thoughts, even though they have a ton of friends, they share where they've been, what they're doing, what their family's up to, this vacation, this new job situation, that they are some of the people that are experiencing loneliness at a level that is really making them very unhappy. And, you know, I have compassion and empathy for them. And I really want to do this show so we do something, you know, we can speak to that and what we think might be helpful. But here's the other thing that would surprise me, is that before ToBeRe, I was a person who chose to be isolated. So I didn't really feel lonely, but I chose to be isolated. I don't need to be around people. I like working out by myself. I like coming home, not talking to people. You know, I have to do it for my profession. But after that, I like being alone. Here's what shocked me, is that in terms of quality of life from a physical health standpoint and mortality, that they had the exact same outcomes for people that were feeling lonely and people who did selective isolation. So people who chose to be alone. They were experiencing the same kind of health outcome. That was shocking to me.
Yeah.
Because I felt like if I'm choosing it, then I'm not lonely. Why should I, you know, have the same kind of mortality rate as someone else? But that's the key of it. So we really need people.
Well, that's part of the issue, I think, with why social media is inadequate in order to fulfill a basic human need, which is connection with other humans. You know, basically, we're wired. We have a chip in our head, whether we like it or not, that requires the existence of other people in a format that we can interpret as either love or interaction that's important. One of the two. It's got to be interaction that's important or love. Hopefully, it's more love than it just is plain interaction. But the idea is there has to be some connection in order for you to feel healthy. Now, you may not have noticed what that toll took on you, but I'll bet it took a toll, even though you were choosing your isolation. There's a study, I don't know if this is similar to the one that you're referring to, but there's a study that I heard about. I've not read it, I've read the abstract of it, that has to do with the 5 contributors to longevity. And I was blown away by this because I thought number 1 would be nutrition or exercise, and number 2 would be nutrition or exercise. Number 1, the thing that is most a contributing factor, the most reliable contributing factor to longevity is a sense of connection with others. Isn't that incredible?
Yes.
And then number 2 is a sense of belonging or a sense of mission extrapolated across all of humanity. So for example, if you're someone who's coaching, you're extrapolating your ability to convince or help other people overcome problems to a wide audience. But it always has to do with this notion of helping others or being in a relationship or being part of something bigger than yourself involving other people.
Absolutely, and I found that if it's that shared goal in which you're coming together to work on something, whether it's volunteering in your community for something, if it's a positive goal, not one that continues to create division or pit one side against the other, but it's a goal in which you're doing something together for the common good, not what you think is good, but what's really in the best interest of all society. You know, Mother Teresa had a great quote when they asked her if she was going to come to a war rally. She said, "No, I won't be coming to that. But if you have a peace rally, count me in." You know, so if it's coming something like that that's for the greater good of everyone, then that makes a difference. So I would like for us both to share our own personal experience with loneliness, or in my case, it was selective isolation, and what the impact of it was. You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Well, that was pretty easy. I think after I was divorced, gosh, it's been over 10 years now, but when I first was divorced, I kind of went into a shell and I felt like I needed to lick my wounds and be away from people, when the opposite was true. I found that by isolating myself more and more, I had more monkey mind thoughts about how inadequate I was as a person, as a lover, as a provider. And then when I was with people, I lost all of that. I could get out of myself and focus more on my relationship and collaborating with them on a particular project, or just listening to somebody talk about themselves instead of me spending so much time on myself. It's almost like you burn out the more time you have to think of things on your own. If you're with a whole bunch of other people, there's always stimuli, there's always things to talk about, and there's always things to collaborate on for greater good or for something that just might be interesting and fun. So that was one thing I noticed. I'm at the point in my life now where I don't have to belong to anything or do anything that I don't want to do, but I find myself joining things. I live in Sedona, so I'm a member of the film festival. I also a member of the Commission of the Arts in Sedona. I've joined a bar group up there, and I like the variety of people, and they all bring something to me that I can't develop on my own. Last point. Social media is effective for a lot of things. I mean, the internet is great, it's never going to go away, it's interesting. Unfortunately, it's something that doesn't create or reinforce human contact. I think, if anything, it's the opposite of gentleness and love. It's more an opportunity for a platform to be scathing, disrespectful,
to be
rude,
right.
to be right, or to to have this eternal, nonstop monologue about how great we are.
Right. Whether it's showing our family vacation with me in Hawaii,
or what I'm
whatever.
eating for my dinner and you're not, you know, it's like, it's a little bit too me, right? It's a little too me. I think that's really what the issue with this issue of isolation is all about. It's too much me and not enough us.
Right. I totally agree with you. You know, an example for me would be the selective isolation. Like I chose to be alone, and I thought that was okay, because I don't know. I went through. It's hard for people to believe it now, but there was a period that I went through that I didn't want to be around people. I just didn't. I wanted to just let me be. Let me do my own thing. I'm very happy to sit and watch this program that I like without having to answer anybody or listen to anyone talk or whatever else. And I didn't really understand that. The impact of it until time went on and I found myself becoming more and more cynical. I found myself becoming more and more depressed. And it was because I had no other point of view to consider except for the one that was in my head. And eventually, that doesn't gravitate to being more positive. That gravitates to being more cynical, and in my case, for sure, more negative.
Well, and self-righteous.
And self-righteous, exactly, because I only had one point of view to consider, which was mine. And, a case in point, I was going through a situation, and I didn't know myself to be someone who was depressed or down. I always thought of myself, as we often do, we often have an inflated view of ourselves, as being really open, kind, positive, loving, considerate. And I went through a period in which something happened in my career 20 years ago. And I had some friends who were worried about me. And so they drove 14 hours from California to come and check on me. And you think that my first response to them would have been, oh my God, you guys are the most amazing friends. Thank you for driving all this way, to come and check on me to see if I was okay. I was upset and put out that they would show up unannounced, to come. How could you come uninvited? And literally came to the door, and we were standing in a doorway, and I was thinking to myself, I think they want to come in. And so they came in, and we stood there in the kitchen, and they were, like, hey, Keith, you have a nice home and this and that. I didn't offer them a glass of water. They had to say to me, hey, you mind if we sit down? We sat down, and then they said, hey, why don't we all go get something to eat? And I was like, I already ate, I'm good. I could not wait for them to get out of my house. And they got back on the road and drove 14 hours away, just like that. I mean, who does that to people that are being that kind to them? But this is what was beginning to take root in me by me being selective and isolating myself from others. It makes you less connected, less loving, less open. And so that all changed when I started becoming, a part of ToBeRe. Like I had to open myself up. And the best time that I've ever had, when I've been the most happiest, is not when I've been alone. It's been when I've been around other loving people. And other people have told me the same thing. In our workshops, we have sponsors. And when they felt like they had the most to offer, the most to give, that they were at their best, it was when they were helping other people. Mm-hmm. You look at people that volunteer their time for a good cause, they're happy. Yeah. And the old me were like, that looks like work. Who wants to do that? But they felt good about themselves. When people have gone to rescue people in situations in which there's been some kind of natural catastrophe, like an earthquake or a wildfire or some kind of tragedy that's happened, out of that you see these first responders come together and they live for that opportunity to help rescue and save someone else. And while the rest of us who are sitting back in our homes not contributing look at, oh, how devastating this is, but these other people see the good that they were able to contribute in a moment like that. So I've just kind of learned, and I practice that whenever I'm at my lowest, I've got to overcome that negative thinking, the ego, that mindset, those negative thoughts. I've got to overcome them and will myself out of the house to be around positive people, not people that are going to affirm these depressing thoughts or cynical thoughts that I have, or going to listen to me be a victim or talk about what's wrong, but for people that are going to be able to stand for me, give me a space, even if it's just being in their energy, to exercise, to move, to be loved, to be free of that negative thought and conditioning and thinking. And when I've done that, Rick, I come out on the other side changed, better.
Well, one of the things I love doing podcasts with this guy is just what he revealed there. I don't think I know another person who has worked as hard on himself as you. And one of the things that shows from that is your ability to tell these stories that don't put you in a very good light, but are true. We all could tell them. We all have them. We've all done things 10 times worse than not acknowledging people who've driven 14 hours to see you. But that story is moving because you are willing to open up to share with other people what your experience has been and how much of a positive influence it is for you to go beyond that and go in your own mind and realize what mistakes you had made. So I want to acknowledge you for that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
It's really a joy to be with someone like that. I'd like to add 2 points. One is that, what about people who are introverts as opposed to extroverts? So let's say, for example, we have the Myers-Briggs test, and one of the areas, one of the axes of analysis has to do with whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. Well, people who are introverted might be saying, well, look, my natural way is to draw energy from being solo, to be by myself. That's something different than what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the willful disengagement from people, probably for a variety of reasons, and I'm not a clinician, but I think that would probably be characterized as dysfunctional. Give an example of that. We all, I think, have been in a situation where our significant other wants to go to a party.
Right.
And you're counting the hours to how many minutes you've got of freedom left before you have to go to this party, and they're all strangers that you don't know, or you have a thought that you may not like them,
right.
And you're just gritting your teeth, but you love your significant other, so you're going. That's part of the coming over the mountain idea that you just had. You got to force yourself to do it, and I'd like to extend that a little further. I think that we all are uncomfortable. It's a paradox. We need people. We feel great when we're with other people, but we also have that moment of thinking that I'm not going to be good enough, or I'm not going to like these people, or they're not going to like me. And that's what we have to fight to get over. And I would suggest that one of the things that you did that forced you to get over that hill was the realization at some point that you weren't getting out of life what you wanted, that there was something wrong that was kind of askew, and that was your need for people that wasn't being fulfilled. So I find myself living alone, that I'm much better if I just say, God dang it, just get out of the house and go to fill in the blank X. Go to a volunteer session at the hospital. Go to a session where they're talking about something you know nothing about, ceramics or making necklaces, just to be with other people and to have a conversation. And I think that is much more fulfilling than sitting on your butt and ruminating about all the problems you have and why no one likes you and why you're better than everybody else and you don't need anybody. That's a dead end.
I totally agree. I've had some great examples in my life of people coming together consistently. I mean, when I say consistently, every week for decades, they came together and they were so happy.
Well, that's like family, right? Isn't that what family like?
Yeah.
Go to a barbecue, everybody has a great time.
Right, exactly. Have a great time, especially if it's a family that people are going to put aside their own ego or dysfunction so that it's not contentious at the family gathering. But a lot of me thinking that they were contentious was because I was bringing that to the table.
You were the one who was
I was contentious. I was bringing it. It's like I said, you can have, it's a hostile world or a peaceful world.
That's right.
It's the same world.
If you love your drunk uncle who tells these outrageous stories.
And you're not judging him the whole time. You'll have a good time.
Yeah, you don't notice that he's,
You will have a good time.
Full of the blank.
And you're taking yourself just way seriously. But, I tell the story that, I grew up in the South, so it was church 6 days a week, And because I didn't like being there every single day of the week, because I didn't like that, I just found I brought so much judgment with it. I was, like, really, another meeting? How many anniversaries can the pastor and his wife have? Like, how many building fund, programs and sermons is he going to teach? I'm like, really? Like, again? How many choir rehearsals? Why am I in a choir? I got no chops. Why am I in a choir? So I was there every single day of the week, that I didn't get that the people that were happiest at my church were the people that they were there for other people.
It wasn't about church.
It wasn't about church.
It wasn't about the pastor's anniversary. It wasn't about the building fund.
They were there because, so-and-so just lost her husband, And we're making food for them, and we're going to all celebrate, this new phase of her life. We're going to give her the space to mourn the loss, but we're also going to help her get on the other side of this so she doesn't isolate herself or he doesn't isolate themselves. They were like that, so-and-so's had cancer, so we're getting together and they just got the diagnosis. And I'm like, man, it was more than just going to say a prayer for them. But we're going to help them laugh and get on the other side of this and go walk with them every day, and somebody's going to check. Like, I was like, man, they were doing for others. And that's what I missed. Like, they were going to keep their commitment to keep us connected. And I did not see that until I got much older and founded ToBeRe. And now I see the power of it. So when I see people are down and they want to isolate, I was like, trust me, I know that's what it feels like the answer is, but it's not, because you wake up the next day and the problem hasn't gotten better. But if you can shift the brain chemistry with exercise first, then you're open to all the love that's around you. You don't shift that chemistry, you won't see anything good about that day. You got to start with shifting this, and movement is the best way to do that. So that's why that's one of my staples. And also the other thing that I learned is that when you're alone, your mind and ego will try to fix the problem by either drinking a lot, and you said this in one podcast, you can drink, but that's a dead end because the problem is still there. Drugs, whether it's prescription drugs or illicit drugs, same dead end. Whether it's eating, in my case, it was dating. Like, I was dating a lot of different people, and so I went from one to the next, and all it did was a temporary reprieve from what was underlying. I was making somebody else be responsible for giving me that's a small moment of happiness and peace, but it's nobody's job, and they can't make me happy. So it had to be something internally, and then it was an addiction to negative thinking and worry and anxiety, all of which don't solve the problem. But if I can shift and start to work on what's internal, now that's lasting.
Connection with other people makes us as individuals better. There's just no other way to put it. And I think one of the difficulties that we have is trying to find the right group. And I would say there is no right group. If they're human, that's the right group.
That's the right group. That's the right group, man. So, Rick, what is something that you want the audience to take away about loneliness or selective isolation?
I think that, again, like so many things we talk about in these podcasts, is first step is always monitoring. Just be aware of the fact that you have this tendency to be alone. And usually that reflects something within us that feels like we're not good enough, or that we'll be made fun of, or we won't be liked, or we won't be loved. It's a feeling that comes from lack, and a feeling that comes from a disappointment, I guess, in thinking we don't measure up. And that's a story you tell yourself, and it's not true. Just showing up with whoever you are, just being whoever you are, is enough. If everyone else does that, and we're all being normal and natural and loving to each other, there's no end to the joy that you can experience with other people. So the first point would be, just be aware of the fact that when you want to feel isolated, you need to overcome it, because it's not something that's healthy or good for you. Secondly, I would say take some small action. Call a friend, meet with a friend, and try to pick somebody who you know is not going to judge you. And then thirdly, see if that friend has other friends that you can horn in on. Go to a party. I'd like wedding crashers. It's a great idea. I mean, not to get the free food, but just to meet some new cool people. The world is literally a playground of very interesting people, and everyone has a story to tell, and everyone in some way is superior to me. And part of what I'm trying to find out in life is how they're superior, and I try to imitate it or try to learn from them so I can enrich my own life. But the path through all of this is through other people, and taking away that resistance, that barrier to being with others. And it's very important, I think, in everything we do as humans, is to eliminate as many of the masks and as many of the worries we have about how we come across, and just be ourselves and show up, and things work out.
Yeah, I haven't met one person, including myself, that said that I'm better off alone, who was actually happy.
Well, the Unabomber, but he's in prison, and so he has a lot of
Yeah.
time to enjoy what he's
Exactly.
experienced.
I haven't met one person who was actually happy, or one person who was peaceful, not cynical, that was loving, that was anything that's good, who was alone, or chose to be alone. You need people. That's the reality of it. I mean, the people that are the happiest are people that have real, authentic, connected relationships, face to face, not through social media solely, but are face to face where they can be their real selves, and the other person has the space to be their real selves. And the more of those people you have around you, the happier you're going to be. The science says it.
No,
And-
that's true. And I think Keith's point earlier was really important too. The idea that the two things you need most are movement, meaning exercise, outdoors, preferably in my case. I think that's really, really important to get outdoor exercise, and people. And if you can combine the two, if you're a cross-country skier in a club, oh man,
It's awesome.
man, you'll never stop smiling.
Exactly, exactly. So that's the show for today. Thank you for joining us.
I love you, Keith.
I love you too, man.
Thanks for
Thank
the
you.
tips, buddy.